our State House studio in Montgomery. I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. Time is winding down in the Alabama Legislature's 2024 regular session. There are just 4 legislative days left, and word is that the session could be done for good by next Thursday. If you tuned in last night, you remember we were on the air as the Senate was still debating the gambling legislation that emerged from conference committee. That debate went on past 11 o'clock, and there were pretty passionate arguments on both sides. Here's a selection.
This is not the state condoning, this is not the state providing access to things that's not there. This is a matter of trying to control matters. We already have lotteries are all around us. People are traveling to play in the lotteries. We know that we are under great, I would suggest, pressure from our population, our people, to bring an action so that we can be participants in that which they are already participating in.
And that I'm not in favor of putting the state in a position where we are going toward our people, selling hope $3 a time when we work so hard on workforce development and other issues. So I cannot be with us unfavorable on this.
It is an illegal activity. We should enforce our current laws.
I concur with that. Would you have an objection to setting up an enforcement arm that could actually perform those duties?
Well, we have an enforcement arm that could already do that. They're choosing not to.
So we got the bill up here, and once we got it, we decided that we were going to take this bill and we demolished it. We really demolished it and sent it back down. We go to conference, and again tonight, the House sends us another mandate on the CA and on the enabling legislation.
Eventually, it was time to vote, and that got a little tricky. On a motion to approve the conference report, 20 senators voted yes and 15 voted no. That's enough votes to approve the report, but not the constitutional amendment. That takes 21 votes. This all led to confusion on the floor as to what came next. Eventually, senators voted to carry over the gambling constitutional amendment, meaning set it aside to possibly bring it up later. Here's how that went down on the floor.
20 ayes, 15 nays. Conference committee fails.
Are we able to make a motion to carry this over? Make a motion to carry this over?
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. All right, bill's carried over.
Procedurally, what we have is we had a conference report that we had from the House, and that conference report needs a majority vote to accept the conference report. Because this was a constitutional amendment, the constitutional amendment needs a 60% vote, i.e. 21 in the Senate to pass. When we took the motion to concur in, and that passed, or that received 20 votes, that meant that the conference report was accepted, was concurred with, but the CA had to have a separate vote so that it could find out if we get 21 votes. Does that make sense? Okay. That's where we are. At that point, that's why we made the motion to carry over so the CA remains in the basket, along with 152. And at the appropriate time, those can be brought back out of the basket to achieve and see where we go from there.
The Senate could bring the gambling package back up as soon as tomorrow. And just as a reminder, the House has already passed the package, so it's all in the Senate's hands. Today was committee day in the legislature, perhaps the last meaningful one of the session. We'll start on the Senate Education Budget Committee, which took up a long list of bills aiming to offer tax credits for various reasons. Chairman Arthur Orr has warned that while tax credits might be for worthy goals, they ultimately result in less revenue for the education budget. 2 credits in particular were approved: the child care tax credit and the housing tax credit. both of which are part of the Working for Alabama workforce development effort.
Listening to this whole discussion has been ongoing forever. People are saying, don't take money from the ETF. Where does most of the money come from, right? It comes from workers. It comes from them having housing. It comes from us having workers and having childcare to be able to do that. So it's easy to say we're not going to take any money from the ETF and take the apple off the tree. But if that tree is wilting away because you don't have workers and a place for them to stay, then that tree's going to be dead and all the apples are gone. You have to invest, and this is a business, so that you can invest this money into the future. So now you don't have one apple, you have a whole tree that is vibrant and you have a whole bushel of them. That's my personal opinion.
Those bills could be on the Senate floor as soon as tomorrow. The Senate Fiscal Responsibility and Economic Development Committee today considered legislation that would require smartphone manufacturers to enable obscenity filters on devices sold in Alabama to help prevent minors from inadvertently being exposed to pornography. Some on the committee had reservations about putting the onus on manufacturers rather than parents, but ultimately the bill advanced to the full Senate.
The difficulty with this bill that I have is that now it puts this level of onus on the device manufacturers who only manufacture the phone, but not the content. And so, you know, I get where it's going, and I definitely can appreciate the ideas here, but I just think the responsibility we place on the manufacturer would basically say that if a person, we're doing this for the state of Alabama, and I don't have any information that lets me know how costly that would be.
I just simply want to say I'm going to support the legislation, but I really, really wish that we went after the people and the entities that are doing the bad deed.
The Senate Agriculture Committee today advanced legislation that would clarify in law that the Medical Cannabis Commission is responsible for regulating the licensing and cultivation of medical marijuana products, and that the Department of Agriculture and Industries is to cooperate in carrying out those functions.
HB 390 deals with some changes in the cannabis, medical cannabis bill. And the cultivar part of the bill, there's some shared responsibilities through the Cannabis Commission and the Department of Ag and Industries. What this bill does is take the Ag and Industry out of that, gives all responsibility to the Cannabis Commission, then the Ag will work with them on whatever their needs are, and then be compensated for those, and they won't have any responsibilities in licensing or enforcement.
The judge in the commission case just ruled that those licenses that were awarded will not be awarded. There is still a stay in place, so it's gonna go on for a little while longer.
That's why this
is
so important.
Yeah, I think I do believe that there may have to be some other legislative fix, but you know, in the interest of trying to get this down to just one particular entity responsible, I think I'm going to accept this motion as a second and ask for a roll call vote. 10-0, Bill's given favor report. Thank you, Representative Crawford.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Good luck going forward.
The House Judiciary Committee had another spirited meeting today, 2 of them in fact. Members debated legislation that would allow inmates to participate in parole hearings virtually. That set up debate about how that might impact victims and victims' families.
I understand what he's doing with the substitute to allow telecommunication, telephone first, to give an extension of time to October 1st of 2025. I support all of those to create the technology to allow this to happen. But there is a right for people to be present involved in court proceedings. I appreciate what he's done to make sure that the victims' families or crime victims will not be seen. I think the parole board can make sure that the camera is focused only on the parole board, so that way the inmate is only looking at what the parole board said, so there will be no required communication between the victim and the inmate at this time. I completely agree with what he's done to give more time to implement this session. However, there is just a fundamental right for people to have the opportunity to have their voice and be present on something that involves their right, their life. So at that point, if we adopt the substitute, I would make a motion for an amendment from may till shall.
Mr. Chairman? I would be opposed to that amendment and would not consider it friendly. As I discussed in announcing the sub, that is the key to this. If we put in the word shall, we then have to go and cover what happens when that telecommunications equipment does not operate, because now you're bestowing a right on someone, and then you've got to plan for those contingencies.
The bill was carried over and is set to come back up tomorrow. Also today, the Legislative Council met and got an update on the construction of a new State House. Lawmakers got to see new renderings of what that building will look like inside and out. Here are a few. This is an aerial view showing how the new State House will fit into the overall Capitol complex. You'll notice that the current State House isn't there because it will eventually be demolished and turned into a park, as you can see there. Here's a view of the front of the building where the public would enter, those front doors there. Pretty nice look, especially compared to our current building. Here's a look at some of the planned committee rooms, which are going to offer a lot more space for the public. That's one of the problems with the existing building. The committee rooms are pretty small. And here's a look at the House and Senate chambers, which will be located on the same floor, so across the hall from each other. That's going to save a lot of us from going up and down 2 flights of stairs every day. Today, Legislative Services Agency Director Othni Lathram said the plan is to have the new State House operational for the organizational session in 2027.
I think it's really important that we not leave here with a false sense of hope about when the legislature is functioning in the building. The legislature will be functioning in the building January of 27 for the organizational session of the next quadrennium, and that's been our commitment from day one and our goal from day one. And so it's exciting that the construction is moving at a quicker pace, but I think it's important to understand that piece of it.
It might be that someday it's about a 50-50. And so, the size of the minority caucus room, things like that have been taken into consideration because the idea is this is going to be here for a long time. And, we have to think about, what if roles are reversed, So those things are being discussed and have been discussed.
Coming up next, I'll speak in more detail about the State House project with Legislative Council Chairman Sam Gavan. We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capitol Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capitol Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capitol Journal podcasts.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal. Joining me next is State Senator Sam Gavan from Huntsville. Senator, thanks for coming on the show.
I'm glad to be with you today.
Well, in addition to being a state senator from Huntsville, you are the chairman of the Legislative Council, which is an internal, members of the House and Senate, really lots of duties and everything. But one of the things that y'all have been charged with is figuring out the construction of a new State House. We've talked a lot about the need for a new State House over the years. It's finally going. We're seeing, that great construction site next door. So y'all had an update in committee today with all these new renderings, an update from the architect. Talk about what you heard today from Othni Lathram, from the architect, and the discussion in the committee.
So we had met with architects recently, and also the ones from New York had come down and met with a number of us on the Legislative Council and other legislators as well, and going over some of the issues. I thought we had a number of things that were fairly well laid out, and obviously there were some comments in there. I know one of the comments I had from looking at it, and I actually went to Virginia with Senator Gudger, and we were doing kind of got a 2-for-1 trip there. We were looking at a program at Virginia Tech that we wanted Auburn to take up along with Southern Union, and that's in the works right now. But a great ag tech program, and I'm really excited about. But we also went and looked at the State House there to see what they did in Virginia. Now they're a little different there because they have the Jefferson Capitol, I think is what they call it, the historic Capitol. They still have, and they have a tunnel walking to it. But the State House will be very similar to what Virginia did. And you know, one of the things I noticed is that they had secretaries sort of sitting in the hall, and right now the secretaries are in our suites with us. And you know, and I was just sitting there thinking, okay, my secretary's trying to deal with a phone call from a constituent. She's trying to relay what you know, those issues are. She might be talking to a school superintendent, it might be something like that. And then you've got people milling the halls. You might have lobbyists milling the halls and sitting there right there kind of leaning over them, and I thought that's not really what we want. So that's one of the things that is being I understand is being put in the mix of changing some things. You know, we had to work around a little bit about how we were going to do the minority and caucus, you know, which was important to me. And it was one of those things I you know, was really made clear to me in Virginia, because Virginia is very balanced between the House, or at least the Senate there. I don't remember the House specifically, but you know, as far as the caucuses, it's sort of a back and forth there between Republican and Democrat. And so I'm thinking, you know, we need to have the rooms that are big enough to accomplish, you know, if we get to, say, a 50-50 status or thereabouts, we need to have comparable rooms. You know, you got to think about what are the shoes on the other foot and being fair about things. And so those fine-tuned things are being worked on.
Yeah. Can't have, you know, the majority have a Taj Mahal and the minorities stuck in the closet. So yeah, and I heard some of those comments today. Well, it is exciting to see some of the renderings about just more space, more thought out space. Obviously, this building was never meant to be a state house. It's all retrofitted.
I went in a room yesterday, I didn't even know it existed, and I was like, oh my goodness. But it's just, there's so many things here, there's so much wasted space, so much dead space, but you know, just the way that this building is deteriorated, the plumbing issues we've had, the historical flooding we've had in this building, the electrical problems, elevators in terms of you know, being able to continue to get parts, how much longer are we going to be able to get parts, also for the HVAC system, so many things, and not to mention the mold that's throughout this building.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're sitting here in the basement. We understand that, but it's also something that the state is going to be able to be proud of. And you got to remember, this is the people's house. This is where the people are supposed to be able to come and talk to you, talk to your colleagues, see the legislative process, and it is going to be exciting to have a place that, you know, Alabama can be proud of. Also, it seems more functional. I mean, I was hearing him talk about the larger chamber rooms, right? Larger House chamber, larger Senate chamber, room for staff, room for things like that, because things really tend to be on top of each other in today's state house.
Well, that's true. I'm actually more excited about the committee rooms and how they're going to be more accessible, have more room for people to be able to observe things. You know, as I made the statement before, you know, we've got some very small committee rooms, and some hot button issues, they fill up very quickly. Well, the lobbyists know where the rooms are. You know, many of our constituents don't have a clue, and so they're wandering around. By the time they get there, the room's full, standing room only, and sometimes, you know, for safety reasons, security reasons, they have to go in an overflow room where they can only listen, they can't see. So I think that's going to be a great element, and you know, having something that the state can be proud of. And you know, when we have people come in, we might have, you know, business leaders come in, we might have, you know, dignitaries coming in from other states. This is not the way to showcase, you know, a state of Alabama. They'd be much better just to take them straight to Jordan-Hare or Bryant-Denny.
Yeah, that's true. Well, were you pleased? Were you satisfied with the progress so far? I mean, I know that there's this move-in date or functional date of January 2027. Are you confident we can meet that in terms of where we are with progress so far?
I think we'll meet that date. I would hope that we could move offices in before that date. I know it's important for some of the members that don't, are not likely to run again, that they would love to be able to serve in this new building for at least a brief period of time. I just don't know that that's going to be very practical. I don't want to overpromise. There are a lot of people out there saying, oh yeah, we can do it, and I've just never been one to want to overpromise the delivery date on that. Because I'm in commercial real estate, and I see in all kind of transactions how we run into different sorts of delays on projects. Could be weather, could be labor, could be materials. We ran into a terrible situation on materials availability or lack thereof during the COVID crisis. So could be a number of things that come up. And I just don't want to over deliver that. But
Sure.
very, very pleased with where things are going and the work that the architects have come up with so far.
Yeah, because it's not just moving in. I mean, you've got to move out of this building, set everything up there. So it's not just a matter of flipping a switch. There's a lot that has to go on. Well, switching gears, let's talk about legislation. First of all, we might as well talk about the gorilla in the room. That's gambling. This big vote last night, late at night. You were a no vote. I think you've consistently been against most gambling legislation. But talk about, I mean, is this bill going to come back? There's talk of it, reemerging. It would take, I guess they need one more vote to have a chance at passing that constitutional amendment. What's the mood of the caucus? Do you think it's actually going to come back?
I don't know the answer to that yet, and there are a lot of people who love to bet on that. But I just personally don't see the no votes changing, and so the conference committee was adopted by the 20 votes that were taken when the conference committee came out of the basket, but and if it had been 21 votes, there would have been no need for another vote.
Right.
But if that initial vote does not yield a sufficient number of votes for the constitutional amendment, then there can be a second vote. I think this is my presumption that they felt like the votes weren't there at the moment, and so therefore they wanted to regroup and talk about it. So yes, it could very easily come back up tomorrow. I don't know if it will or not.
Well, we'll see. I mean, all eyes are on the Senate and seeing if it's going to come back out of the basket. Other issue, you've got this workers' comp bill providing education employees with workers' comp insurance, I suppose. I guess a lot of people might not realize this has never existed before. And so talk about the need for this bill and where it is in the process.
Yeah, it's so shocking that, to many legislators to find out that our educators do not have workers' compensation insurance or program. Our state employees do. And it's different a little bit, and I won't get into the nuances because I don't, not obviously, but I don't do workers' compensation work, so I don't understand all of the nuances there because it is a specialty of lawyers that handle that. But basically, when an employee gets injured, there's a procedure for them to be compensated. They don't get as much money, but they would be compensated. That happens with state employees, but it doesn't happen with our teachers. They have to go to the Board of Adjustments, which really isn't set up to handle those type of claims. As a 3-member panel that consists of the treasurer, the finance director, and the auditor. So most people acknowledge, school administrators and in the Board of Adjustments acknowledge there needs to be a program like this. The devil's sort of been in the details, and we're still kind of fine-tuning those details, but I'm very pleased where we are. It's a big movement forward. I mean, there was a tragic case, and I don't remember the lady's name from Tuscaloosa that was injured on the job. I mean, and she's just, going to be maimed for life pretty badly, and just basically didn't get anything. And there's things like that especially for those that don't have 10 years in, that can't take essentially what I'm going to call early retirement. That may not be the technical term, but we're just not taking care of those people properly, and we need to take care of our folks.
Mm-hmm. Talk about the costs though, because every time now that all these you saw it today in committee with all these workforce credits and tax credits and things like that, and Chairman Orr saying, look, we can't give everything. Every time you have a tax credit, it takes away from the Education Trust Fund. So what about this? I mean, it seems to me that workers' comp could be another additional cost to the Education Trust. So is there an estimate?
There is. It's $14.9 million, and I think they're basing that on part of what. It's by risk categories. Obviously, you don't expect a teacher to get hurt on the same level as you do someone working for the Department of Transportation. So, the Department of Transportation actually has some of the more dangerous jobs in the state.
Sure.
But so, they have to do basically a risk analysis of, okay, you got this sort of stuff. Like I work in a law firm. We don't get many people hurt in a law firm. So, our risk is very low. And so you have to analyze it like that. And while there are roughly, as I recall, there's like 5 times as many education employees as there are state employees. So, you know, our projected number, I think, it is certainly not 5 times the cost of state employees, that's usually a rule of thumb when you see.
Because there's more,
things,
right?
Because you have so many more. But what you would see here is, I think, about a 3-to-1 ratio or so, and it's because the risk is less.
Okay. Well, that's something to follow. And again, bring up costs because that's kind of been the watchword as all these bills have come about. So I guess it's in the House right now?
That is in the House. It has gone through the committee in the House, so I expect it will be on the floor next week.
Okay. Just a few days left in the legislative session, so we're here in the home stretch. Well, Senator, thanks for your time.
Tick tock.
That's right. Well, thanks for your time, and we'll see you upstairs.
All right. Thank you very much.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night with more coverage of the Alabama legislature here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capitol Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.